Call to order the regular meeting of the Planning Commission. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Be seated.
Amen.
Call the roll, please.
John Junko.
Here.
Maria Mills Bennett.
Here.
Bo Volkme.
I'm here.
Mike Arminio.
Here.
Thomas Jordan.
I am present.
Newton White.
Here.
Lance Green.
Here. Consideration of the minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, we have one correction that we need to have in the minutes. On item 5, the minutes say that I seconded that motion. I chaired the last meeting and was able to second that.
Yep, it was corrected. It went back and listened to.
Okay, because I hadn't seen the corrected copy.
Robin's out, so she hasn't been able to add it to the website.
How dare her go on vacation?
That's right.
Okay, you good with that?
Good with that.
Any other comments? Call the roll, please.
John Junko.
Yes.
Maria Mills Bennett.
Yes.
Bo Volkme.
Yes.
Mike Arminio.
Yes.
Thomas Jordan.
Yes.
Newton White.
Yes.
Lance Green.
Yep. Thank you. All right. Case number. Wait a minute, wrong one. Case number 17-9000001, variance at 65 Dunlawton Avenue. Penelope.
Good evening, Penelope Cruz, planner. The subject property is a little over half an acre, and it's located on the north side of the Dunlawton Bridge, east of PJ's Deck and King Seafood, in a down under area of the of the Port Orange Town Center redevelopment area. This site, as many of you know, was previously developed as a Holiday Harbor restaurant, then Harbor Lights restaurant, and later reopened under a few other names. The restaurant structure that was there before was demolished in 2015, so the site is currently undeveloped. The site is proposed to be redeveloped with a new approximately 3,000 square foot, 648 square foot Jimmy Hulla's restaurant with associated site improvements. The redevelopment of this infill site will be an improvement for the overall done-under area of the town center CRA, with a building that will meet current architectural codes and improved landscaping, add to the waterfront theme of the area, and as part of that CRA, and it will enhance the aesthetics and vitality of the area. However, as we've seen with other variance cases in the CRA before, in order to support redevelopment and infill sites such as these, variances or flexibility and development requirements are typically required for sites to redevelop. And our LDC, as you all know, is generally focused on regulating new greenfield sites, typically at suburban dimensions. So these infill redevelopment projects generally require more flexibility in development regulations to allow underutilized properties to redevelop. Oops. The subject property is also, as you can see on this graphic here that was in your staff report as well, down the center of the property, it's bisected by approximately a 10-foot wide city-owned parcel. It's not an easement, it's an actual separate parcel that the city owns. And within that parcel is a gravity sewer line and a regional lift station. The lift station is back here towards the back of the property, which creates a unique design challenge for this lot. According to the proposed concept plan submitted with the variance application, the redevelopment of this site is it requires 6 variances. And these include, and they're numbered here on your graphic, 1, to reduce the minimum 12-foot wide drainage and utility easement along the right-of-way to 10 feet along the frontage of the building. So just in this area right here. Number 2, to reduce the west building setback from 15 feet to 5 feet. Number 3, to reduce the minimum lot open space percentage from 30% to 24%. Number 4, to reduce the distance between the first parking space and the right-of-way from 25 feet to 16 feet. To reduce the dimensions of a regular parking space from 10 by 20 to 9 by 19, and to reduce the north landscape buffer to a variable width buffer of a maximum width of 20 feet and a minimum width of 4.5 feet. The site has been designed, according to the applicant, to provide to shift that most intense portion of the use, the actual restaurant building itself, closer to the adjacent properties and away from the residential area to the north, in order to help create the least impact to that residential area, while still allowing for the landscape buffer, the 5-foot landscape buffer over here on the west to be provided, which is generally an overall improvement as of, the previous site that was, the previous building that was there in the existing conditions, there was no landscape buffer there. So they're trying to shift the building down here to this corner, still provide that buffer and get it as far away as possible from the residential areas as they can. However, this design that locates that building the furthest away from the residential areas requires that reduced, sorry, can you see my cursor? That reduced west buffer here, setback, not buffer, I'm sorry, reduced building setback from 15 feet to 5 feet, and also requires the variance for the 12-foot utility easement to go down to 10 feet in this area right here where the building is located. It would be 12 feet for the rest of the way along the frontage. The concept plan also proposes to locate parking spaces 16 feet from the right-of-way rather than 25 feet, and that's these first parking spaces. That reduced setback is only for 4 of the parking spaces, and again, it's to help meet the required total number of parking that the code requires. They're trying not to have to ask for a variance for reduced parking. They're trying to provide all the parking that's required by the Land Development Code, but in order to do so, they've asked to have that reduced setback from the right-of-way. As you can see, it's still greater than what's there now. The parking is only about 6 or 7 feet away from the right-of-way right now. Also, in order to be able to provide the required amount of parking on the site, they've asked for the reduced parking dimensions of 9 by 19. And this is something that the Planning Commission has seen before. It's common in this general area. It's also consistent with the other cities in the region and with many of the PCDs and variances approved by the city for other infill redevelopment projects. For the north landscape buffer, the LDC requires a 20-foot width buffer along that rear and a minimum 6-foot tall wall or opaque fence. The landscape buffer proposed is a variable width buffer that goes to 20 feet in some of the spots, but goes down to the narrowest point, 4.5 feet. The 6-foot tall fence or wall is required and would be provided. The applicant has also committed to providing the same quantity, meaning the same number of plantings, number of trees and shrubs, etc., that's required in the 20-foot buffer in that reduced buffer. Currently, there's no landscaping in the rear buffer or the sides of the property, so this would be an improvement to the existing conditions and what was there before. And that leads to the last variance request regarding the open space. The LDC requires a minimum open space of 30% for this zoning category, and what the site plan is showing on this current concept plan is 24% of the site remaining is open space. Which again is a big improvement from what's there now. As y'all are probably familiar with this site and can see here, it's mostly covered in concrete or pavement. It's 98% covered. There's 2% open space. So the 24%, although not meeting the 30, is a big improvement from what's been there in the past. So with that, I'm going to end my presentation. Staff has received objections from 3 of the adjacent neighbors on Coral Way. That has been forwarded to the Planning Commission. One of the emails was in your packet. The other ones we received after the packet went out, but we emailed that to each of the planning commissioners. And then we also had one of the families come in and speak to us the other day. So we've been made aware of that. The applicant has also spoken to one of the residents with objections. The applicant throughout, from when we received the application, asked if anybody was willing to contact them. They'd be willing to reach out and talk to them about what's being proposed. They want to be a good neighbor, and they want to see if they can resolve any objections. So one of them was interested. We gave them the phone number. The applicant spoke to them, and we were made aware today that they've, since hearing these objections and knowing specifically what the concerns were, they've gone back to the drawing table and tried to adjust some things on the concept plan. And I believe they're here and prepared to go over some of those adjustments that they've made to try to address some of the concerns that we've heard from the residents. So I'm going to turn it over to them so they can show you some of those adjustments that they've made to their concept plan, and hopefully that will address some of the concerns we've heard as well.
All right, so before you go, let me make sure that none of the panel has any questions for you. Do you have any questions of
Yeah, yeah.
Go ahead.
You know, is there open parking underneath the bridge? I know that, so, I know that Deck Down Under uses that a lot, because, you know, we go down there and you don't have a parking area and their parking lot, so you go underneath the bridge. I mean, is there a way to use that as your shared parking?
Yeah, it's actually available there's a parking agreement for everyone it's open to anyone to use.
So-
But they're not asking for a variance from the number of, they are meeting their parking requirements on this site.
I understand it,
on the concept plan.
but
it is
in order to
available.
do that, you're having all these other things that we have to do.
Well, you're having smaller spaces
Yeah, you're
too.
having smaller spaces, you're lessening the buffer, and I'm more concerned about the residents behind there. You know, I mean, I'm glad that something's finally moving along on there, but I'm more concerned about, is the noise what are the hours of operation? Is the noise gonna be loud for the neighborhood? Can we go higher, all the way up to the 10 feet with the fence, and would that help the buffer, things of that nature?
And I think the applicant's here to try to address some of those concerns. But that parking that's there, it's shared parking for all the restaurants down there and users in that down under area.
So will we have all of these 6 items are they gonna be separate? Is it all for one or none, or how does that go?
It's all a joint
It's all
request.
one deal?
But they are here, and there's some things that I think that they've done to try to address some of the residents' concerns that might,
Okay,
you know, adjust some of those requests.
okay, let me make sure there's some more questions of you first. You got anything for her?
Yeah, just quickly, the 6 items, I'm all over 5 of them. There's one that I have a concern about. So if we don't, you know, if I don't like that aspect of it, how are we going to vote on the overall approval?
I mean, you can make your motion however you
Come back
feel
to it,
pleased,
Karen.
but, I mean, the applicant would have to speak to whether that project is viable anymore without all 6.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Maria?
I think I'm good.
John, just anything for?
Quick question regarding the condition of the gravity-fed drainage underneath in the middle of the parking lot. How old is that?
That's been there, hold on one second, that was in my staff report. Where did I put my, here it is. It was in the 60s, I believe. Sorry, I don't have that memorized. So that it was actually, yeah, so the property, that parcel became deeded to the city in 1964, and the utility improvements were installed in 87. And it's a regional.
I mean, in lieu of the age and what's going smack down in the middle of this property, is there any way some type of evaluation of the condition of that can be confirmed before you guys start commencing construction and paving?
Oh, yeah, I mean, utilities has been part of this process. They've reviewed it. The location of that is not a problem for site design as far as like, because it has easements over it, and so the parking's there. A building can't be located, so
Okay.
it makes the site a challenge to design because you have to move the building to one side or the other. The pipe could be relocated. It would be very expensive, but the lift station cannot. Utilities has stated that that lift station cannot because it's a regional lift station and it cannot be relocated. So it's.
Okay, well, that was my concern, was the condition of that, if everything's
But I'll-
going on around that.
Yeah.
So-
The lift station's above, so that can be maintained and repaired if, as needed. It was just the underground stuff that I was concerned about. Thank
And
you.
it's our city parcel, so we have full
Okay.
access to
So
all
with
that.
the city owning a parcel between the 2 parcels, is this considered 2 parcels, or we're considering it as one
It's-
parcel? So you're saying it's not an easement, but,
It's one parcel with another parcel. It's the first one I've ever seen like this. It has the same parcel number on either side. It was, that center part was deeded over to the city back in the 60s, but
And it's
it's
not
got
an
the same.
easement?
No. The applicant has agreed to give us additional space on either side of our parcel. Utilities said if this is gonna go like this, we'd like to get an easement on either side of our parcel just to have a little bit more room, and they've agreed to that.
but we're drawing this concept plan like that doesn't exist, like that property line doesn't exist.
No, they are taking, and that's why,
You're parking right over it, right?
right now, there's parking over it.
Okay.
And that's fine. You can have pavement, and you can have parking over it, you can't have a building, which is why it was a huge challenge for them. They were trying to relocate the building in a way that had at least impact on the residents, moved it away from them, but also doesn't touch that parcel and that utility
Gotcha.
line.
Right,
So
right.
it was taken into consideration in their concept.
Okay. All right. So we'll hear from,
Mr. Chairman, let me,
Yeah, go ahead.
Ms. Duss,
I'm
I've
sorry.
got a question for you, Penny. Do you know the fences that are along the north side of that property? Do you know who owns those?
So the original wall that was there before
Mhm.
was, put in with a subdivision. And,
The residential subdivision on the north
yes.
side? Uh-huh.
And there was, going back through some of the historic files, there was some kind of a property dispute at some point, and they found out that a portion of the wall was actually put onto the commercial property. A portion of it had to get removed. It got replaced by the residents with a fence. So that's why you see some portions where there's a wall and some portions where there's a fence. But the original wall that was there was part of the subdivision, and the fence that's there is the residents' fence.
Okay, so all
But
that,
they're required regardless, because they're the commercial property redeveloping, they would be required to install a fence or a wall as
So we-
part of their buffer.
so in addition to the fences that are there, there'd be another fence or wall?
Yeah,
Okay.
and then that would be up to the residents whether they want to keep theirs or not,
Yeah.
but they have, the commercial property would have to install.
Is the lift station, is that currently surrounded by a fence? Is that what I saw back there? Was this a fenced-in square of some sort? Okay. And that's not where the,
And
I
with
guess-
any proposed redevelopment, in addition to that, whoever would redevelop that site would add landscaping then around that. So right now, where it's just the lift station and a fence, you have landscaping as well.
and that would be, essentially, that's just immediately east of where the proposed trash receptacle
Yeah,
area is?
it's right in here. Yeah. Yeah, you can
We don't
kinda
have
see it.
that picture on our screen,
Same
so.
Sorry.
Yeah, right next to the
Yeah, I
dumpster.
assume it's that kind of squared off, sitting at an angle.
Do they see that? Can you see that? It's right in here.
Yep.
That's what I thought. Okay, thanks.
Welcome.
okay. We'll hear from the applicant.
Good evening. My name's Pete Zahn, Zahn Engineering, 244 South Palmetto Avenue in Daytona Beach. The staff report was very clear and concise. It addresses all the issues. We've got, I don't know where to start with these. We could go through these requests for variances one by one. Some are real simple. The issues that seem to be of the most importance are the landscape buffer. We don't, do you happen to have an overhead, I hope? We didn't come prepared for that. This is the only thing I've got on a revised site plan.
I have that on mine.
Okay,
I just had a
great.
feeling just in case.
Perfect.
Okay.
We've moved the dumpster. There we go.
Oops, why wouldn't I do that? Oh, because I put from the beginning. There you go.
So we moved the dumpster. Does this cursor work right? It was in here. That's moved over to this point. We have pushed the pavement up against the north property line of the building, as close to the building as we can. We left a 1 foot area in there so that we can put some bollards in case somebody hits the gas instead of the brake. And we've managed to provide 10 feet all the way across the closest. It's still 20 feet at the two islands on the end. So we've brought the, I guess, the easterly side of that out to 10 feet all the way across. We could also plant some landscaping inside the lift station parcel if the city's agreed to that. That's not ours to do. Those are the primary changes that we've made to address the concerns that came through the emails and a letter from Josh Wells. The building setback on the west side, the building was there before. Let me go to the easement down the middle because there was a question about that. We had a staff review meeting with the city before we began our concept. We had a basic concept plan because we were concerned about that also. Because on the tax rolls, it shows as one parcel, but it also shows that parcel as owned by the city. It's not an easement. So we're used to working with easements. In this case, we were assured that we can continue to use it for parking. We've got the travel lane down the middle of that easement. Right here, the sewer line comes in right there. So if there were problems in the future and they had to get in there and maintain it, they could sheet this. We could still stay in operation. They could get in there and do what they need to do. It's also been reviewed by Public Works and Utilities, and they're okay with how we're doing this. The area right here along the building, there is a code requirement for 12-foot utility easement along right-of-way, and they've got some utilities in there, and Kenny Ho wanted that easement along there, so we asked about just a reduction only along the frontage of the building, because this site is so close, we need every foot we can get. He said a 2-foot difference along that area would not matter to him, so that's one of the variance requests that we've got. The other is the 5-foot building setback on the west. The parking lot, parking space sizes, that's a, I won't say it's a common, but it's a normal revision for parking places. I noticed in the staff report, they had a table of all the parking place sizes for the other municipalities. So 9 by 19 is common in the shores, for instance. Let's see. And that comes down to the landscape buffer. The wall wasn't an issue as far as a variance goes, but it was a request from the property owners that it be increased in height. The allowable is 6 feet. To increase it in height requires a variance request. We didn't place it on that. In effect, what happens is the property owner, Mr. Bean in particular, on the north, there's a 2-foot elevation difference there. The property has been filled 2 feet. He would see an 8-foot wall. There's been a question about block wall versus a fence. What we're suggesting on the fence is a solid PVC fence. It won't have slats in it. You won't see through it. It'll be completely 100% opaque. We don't have a problem with the block wall. The difference in the construction is going to be that a 4-inch PVC will fit right on the property line. Gives us more room by a couple of feet to plant the landscaping that we've got to put in there, because we've agreed to put the landscaping count that would go into a 20-foot landscape buffer into this 10-foot space. Plus we've got the islands out here at the east and west end that we can add some shade trees and other larger landscaping materials. The block wall, the city has a requirement that it be about 3 feet off the property line to allow for maintenance. I have details, and I've done many walls that the footer is 6 inches off the property line. The wall itself is about 6 inches inside that. It's a cantilever footing, so it could be built almost exactly on the wall, but it would require, I guess that would be an administrative variance to allow us to put it on the property line versus 3 feet back. The difference there is you're going to get an 8-inch thick wall, so it's going to take up a little bit of the area that we're trying to plant landscaping in along that strip. If you had a question about what's existing and coming out, the existing wall, there's parts of it, so it had a footing. That'll all have to come out. We won't use anything existing in there. It'll be all new construction, so that'll be all excavated, removed, and a new wall put in, whether it's a block wall or whether it's PVC. Then Mr. Bean, if he chose to, or the other property owners, if they chose to remove their fence, they could. They put up a wood shadow box fence in there. John Zimbal is he's a professional engineer in the office. He's done the nuts and bolts design on this. And Friday last week, he called Mr. Bean, or maybe Mr. Bean called us, I'm not sure, because he had contacted Penny and was given our contact information. So we talked to him about the wall and putting in bamboo, and he liked the idea of bamboo. We'll allow him to have some input into what gets planted in there. We'd like to do all we can to try to thicken up that buffer. I think I've covered all the issues. Do you guys have any other comments?
Okay, yeah, Pete, so my first question I have, and I went out there and looked at the site, and it is, it's old, and it's been there a long time, and it's been torn up and everything. So the elevation change between this property to the adjoining property to the north.
We're not going to change the parking lot. The parking lot's going to be used. We'll cut out the asphalt that we don't need. It'll be removed, the base is removed, and proper dirt for landscaping will be put in.
Okay. So what about the 2-foot differential between that property?
Well, what that does is that prevents any runoff from going that way. It drains towards Dunlawden.
Okay.
We'll put the wall in there. That'll add another layer.
Okay. See, I'll be the first to say I'm not really into the wall versus if we could put a fence with more vegetation. Now,
What's that, where's gonna be the biggest buffer?
again,
I mean, a sound buffer, light buffer?
correct.
And that's gonna be the
It's
biggest thing.
solid. It's not intended to have slats in it. It'd be a
So it's gonna be
100%
just as,
opaque.
so it's gonna be just as good as a wall, as
Yes,
far as
sir.
sound barrier?
Well, what we'd do is we'll put, instead of using the 4-inch PVC posts that support those, at either every post or every other, we'll put a 4-inch, 4x4 into the ground, into concrete. So that wall is not going to move. You won't see that blowing over in hurricanes like all these others have.
Okay. Here's a perfect situation where we're trying to get an infill. We're trying to make something happen on a piece of property. But again, we gotta keep in mind what's gonna be the least amount of impact to the adjoining property. And that's always been one of my big tickets sitting up on this bench, is how do we impact our neighbors and how are we gonna be good neighbors? Now, it's been a restaurant for many, many years and before some of them houses there. So it's been a business, it's operated as a business, it's just out of business right now. So
Right.
the question is what can we do to help get something in, but yet let's keep the neighbors in mind. So with that being said, Newton,
I'd just like to add one thing.
Go ahead.
The size of this is important because Hotel Restaurant Commission has requirements for seating and for sizes. We squeezed it down to this, it's half what that previous restaurant was. We pushed it to the side because that's where the foundations, that's where the water and sewer is, and it puts it farther away from the residents.
and I like that concept, but we've done good with the design. Newton, anything for Pete?
I like everything that he has talked about. The hard PVC fence and the bamboo, I think, would be a good combination. The bamboo, decorative, Jimmy Hula's bamboo, tropical. That sounds just like it's made to go together.
But it's a noise thing. It
Yeah, well,
absorbs noise.
The noise, yeah, it's
That's
a
the big
lot
thing.
denser than, it's a lot denser than a tree because it's gonna be a continuous
It can go tall.
noise absorption, and it'll actually be taller than the fence.
And if there's no objection from the property owners on the other side, he in his letter said he had about a 4-foot landscape strip that he put between the fence and the edge of the Coral Way, which is just behind that piece. We could put some of the landscaping in there. We probably don't get credit for that because it's not on site. But if that's something that would help, we can do that.
All right, we'll come back to that one.
I'm not a big fan of 9-foot wide parking spaces, but in this situation, in an infill situation, it's really the only way you're gonna get enough parking, and that was my concern with this, is having enough parking for you and the other two evening businesses in the down under.
And while there is parking under the bridge, it's 200 feet away. For the other businesses, it's almost right there.
I'm good.
Tom?
I'm good. I'm fine, thanks.
Yeah, Pete, what is the hours of operation for the restaurant? I mean, weekends especially.
Hours of operation.
Our location in Ormond is open until different nights of the week, 11 or midnight.
So the latest on the weekends is 11 or midnight.
Okay. And you said the reason why you wouldn't want to use that shared parking underneath the bridge is because it's further away?
Absolutely. I
Okay.
mean, no question
But, I
about
mean,
that.
but it can be used for,
Yeah.
I get it. I mean, I was looking at another way where you wouldn't have to shrink the size, because because we did this for Porthole, and I can't see a big old truck getting in a 9-foot spot.
Well, here's how it came up. When we were in the staff review meeting, that would have been another variance. We were trying to limit them.
Yeah, right.
So this looked like a better way to do it, where we didn't have to rely on off-site parking for our use.
Understood. Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like Lance said, we have a lot of redevelopment coming up in the future, all the way down that Ridgewood corridor. And this is what we've been preaching about for at least for 14 years for me, is about let's work with them and let's get something going. You know, and we have to be reticent though of the neighborhood, you know, just to make sure it would be the least impact to the neighborhood.
If it went to 10-foot spots, how many spots would you lose?
I don't know. A substantial amount. I mean, what's 1/10 point, you know?
How many spaces are there now,
we'd lose
Pete?
if we went to 10-foot wide.
How many places are there now?
54.
Okay, so you lose 54
kinda-
feet.
And these are, of the 54, the ones right over here next to the
You'd lose about 6 spots.
building are compact, and then there's some for motorcycle in there, so we had to do a bunch of,
You'd lose roughly 6 spots.
At least.
Which would take you out of
probably.
your seating.
Okay, I'm just running all these things in my head. Bo? Maria?
One of my biggest concerns, again, was the being a good neighbor, just like Lance and Mike were talking about, making sure that the impact on them isn't a big deal, but I don't see any outside patio areas. Do you guys
It's-
plan on?
If there is any, it's planned to be along the south side of the building. Under that roof, what you
Oh,
see
yeah,
is
yeah.
a white, that's the roof line.
Okay,
All
I
activities will be
see.
under that roof line.
okay. Because my thought was, I know Jimmy Hula's is usually open late. If you have a band out there, like, to me, that's going to be the biggest impact. A Friday night, a band on the patio, that's going to be the biggest impact. With everything inside, I really don't see it being that much of a bigger impact than what's already there. I mean, between DJ's deck and Dak Down Under and everything that is already going on under there, everything being inside the building, I really don't see it being that big of a huge difference. So just something to keep in mind if you're planning on patios and outside bands. I think that's where you're going to run into the bigger problem. But with the buffers and everything, I'm perfectly happy, and I think it's good.
Thank you.
John?
You guys are talking about parking. I just want confirmation. The north side shows smaller parking spots, right? Are those, by definition, compact?
These would be compact.
Okay, what about above it on the
These are
north side?
motorcycle, and they count as spaces, so what we were trying to do is get a parking count. You can have a percentage of compact, a percentage of motorcycle.
Now, if
And
you
so
go
in
up
order to meet our
north
parking
higher,
count-
you go
Say
up
again?
higher, if you move your mouse up higher.
Okay, the one right along the north
Yeah,
edge?
that whole side, that I thought was the same size.
No, those are 9 by 19s.
They're
aren't
9
they,
by
John?
9, and then the ones on the east side, they look wider?
So they're standard size along the north edge of the parking.
Okay, because these on the east side look wider than on the north side.
They aren't.
Okay,
They are or are
Aren't?
not?
They're consistent throughout the site.
okay.
What
Is
is
it
the
visual
difference in
thing?
size?
It's a visual thing.
Yeah, because that's, I thought you had it, because I own a truck, I'm asking questions that, if I'm gonna
You're
come here,
parking
where am
under
I
the
parking?
bridge.
I'm gonna heads
You're
up
parking
here,
under the
so-
bridge.
Under the bridge.
Walk 200
You're
feet.
walking.
What's the difference in size between a compact space and a, what's the dimension for a
8.5
compact?
by 15.
So another 6
compact.
inches
By
shorter.
15. And then there's an overhang, so they got 17, 8.5. So actually a car is about 6 wide and probably 15 or 16. So the parking spaces are, but you need to have enough room, open the door and get out. So.
Okay.
Well, I don't think any of us have Lincoln Continentals anymore, so I think we're pretty good.
John, are you done?
Yeah, I'm done, thank you.
Hang on one second. Johnny,
Kudos to
I'm
you
sorry.
guys too for going out of your way to try to be good neighbors. Like, I really appreciate that.
Okay, Johnny, I'm sorry, you done?
I am done.
Okay,
yes, sir.
Matt?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just one question of Mr. Zahn about the distance from the first parking spot in this
Right,
revised
right,
plan
right.
to the road. I don't know that we touched on that. Is that
Was,
going to be less than or greater than the proposed 16-foot deviation that you've requested in your variance?
right, it was 16 in the so we'd like the variance to be revised to read 10.67. What that does is it moves, we're limited in north-south dimension. So if we're gonna pick up additional green up at the north property line, this whole thing's gotta slide down. So it looked like the least impact was down here at these first row of parking places. We have a very low traffic count coming in, so there's plenty of room to come in, maneuver into the site.
So you've revised number 4 and 6. 4 has been revised to the, what you said 10.67 as
Correct.
opposed to the 16-foot.
Number 4 is revised from 25 to 10.67, that's correct.
And number 6, just so we get this right, is
Revised, the last number from 4.5 is 10 feet, a
Okay.
minimum width of 10 feet.
thank you.
Which I get, because I think
That way it's
it'd be
minimum
less of-
across the board.
yeah, on the entranceway, I don't see a problem with that. I'd rather gain more buffer on the back than on the front.
Absolutely.
And that's off the sidewalk, is that right? Is that what I'm seeing? That would be, sidewalk is that north edge of the,
Off the right of way, I believe is what the minimum.
yeah, it's hard to tell.
Center Road.
Okay. All right, thank you, Pete. Let's hear from the people. Anybody want to come up and speak to this?
Afternoon, Commissioners. My name's Josh Wells, 340 North Causeway in New Smyrna Beach. I'm an attorney at Wright and Casey. Here tonight on behalf of specifically the abutting owner, Mr. Bean, but I think his interests align pretty similarly with some of the other surrounding owners that are here tonight as well. And as I mentioned in my letter, the angle the neighbors were really coming and approaching this project with were from the traditional basic planning angle. Euclidean zoning, right? The separation of different land uses through transitional zones and buffers. And when you have very differing land uses abutting one another, those buffers become really important. And here we have a commercial use, a restaurant, which is an relatively intense land use, butting up next to single-family residential houses, which is a relatively not intense land use. So the homeowners were concerned really specifically about variance number 6, which was requested as part of this proposal. Just to be clear, Mr. Bean, and I don't think any of the surrounding property owners have any problem with the use itself. They use the restaurant, they're okay with the restaurant being there, they can't really stop a restaurant from being there. It's just the buffer, you know, making sure that the things are addressed properly, that we've already kind of touched on. And I really do appreciate Mr. Zahn working to manipulate some of the things that were originally proposed to be, you know, the better neighbor. Moving the dumpster area is huge, I think. Adding the extra 5 feet is huge. But I do want to call your attention to the fact that the LDC requires the 20 feet as a minimum. So the 10 feet, we're still up at half of the minimum. So that was one of the main concerns of the neighboring property owners there, by virtue of the fact that it lends itself to less of a buffer for the noise, for the water sheeting, for the light. And I did speak with Mr. Zahn before I came in. I do believe the PVC fence will address some things like the light, but I'm not so sure that something other than a concrete wall is going to address the noise quite as much. I don't know, you know, a bamboo and PVC fence, if that's going to block quite so much of the noise. But as far as the other elements, I am pleased that we're working and making progress towards some sort of an agreement between the sides. And if you are willing, as I said, I don't believe we have any issues with variance requests 1 through 5. This is something that seems like it may still need to be fleshed out a little bit more between the developer and the neighboring property owners. And I believe all parties may be interested, all of the abutting owners at least, may be interested in an extension of an additional planning commission hearing to work some of those issues out. But at a minimum, I would request, if you are going to grant a variance tonight, to make sure that a condition of approval would be the quantity of plantings that would otherwise be required.
We're going to go ahead and let you continue on. Go ahead.
Okay. Just to maintain that, I know it was discussed in there that the applicant was committed to doing so, but I didn't really see that it would be any sort of concrete requirement of the approval. So that I would request that. And then the block wall feature, that's really just a balancing, I think, that needs to be worked out between the abutting property owners and the developer. I don't know if one can really be shown to be beneficial over the other from all aspects or not. It may need to be balanced, you know, given light, noise, watershed, all those elements to really kind of be fleshed out. And I don't know that we have that fleshed out quite yet. But I will let the abutting property owners speak and give you their opinion. This is, again, the opinions specifically of Mr. Bean, but I think everybody's kind of coming from the same angle with variance number 6 here.
Where does Mr. Bean live exactly and adjacent to this property? Is he
116.
directly behind it?
Directly behind it, 116 Coral Way.
There's 2 houses that are directly behind this property, correct?
I can show you on the aerial.
It was 3. About the first one there, Penny.
Yeah, I think that's one, yeah.
There you go.
So on this right here, hold on one second.
Hey, right.
On this right here, this is Mr. Bean's property.
Okay.
Coral Way actually comes here, so the roadway is actually there. There's landscaping. His house is right there.
Okay, so there's a roadway actually between this property, the roadway, and then Mr. Bean's house?
Yeah, it's a private drive for the
Right, right.
mini subdivision cul-de-sac kind of
Right.
area.
So basically you have an additional buffer with that
And
road.
The road.
there's 4 feet between what is now a fence line per se and then the roadway?
I'm not sure on that. In this area you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know specifically there.
Okay,
But I believe that's where Mr. Zahn was talking about planting the bamboo as sort of an additional concession,
correct.
which is, again, one of those things. It's a great idea and a great concession. It's just something I'd like to bring to my client, you know, because I haven't really had the ability to do that.
Understood.
But, yeah,
Okay, thank you.
sure.
We had this issue with Hidden Treasure before,
Mhm.
and they just put a fence up and it handled it,
Yeah,
but this is different, sir.
okay. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else want to come up and speak to this?
My name is Andy Meek. I live, the Coral Way comes down. Mr. Bean's house is here. Miss Shannon, she's back here. She lives in the house
You're
next to
pointing on
that.
the screen?
Oh, I can, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we
Can you move the
see
mouse?
that.
Yeah.
You west or
That's
east?
okay, hold on. Here we go.
You west or east though?
You're just trying
Sorry
to,
about that.
you're
This
trying to
is
drag
Mr.
it?
Bean's
That's
house.
Mr. Bean,
Okay,
This is
and that's
Shannon.
Miss Shannon's house,
Okay.
and
Right
then
here.
I live next to, that's my house.
Right
Okay.
there, behind the,
Yeah.
behind the Hunter
And
building.
there's no roadway or anything between my house and there.
but you got a little trail to the ice cream place though, right?
Yes, and we could, and we
There you
appreciate
are.
that hard.
You're actually out there.
And to get to the point, I mean, you know, and you know, I think we all love fish tacos, you know, and so, you know,
No, we don't.
we're not, you know.
Afraid not.
Oh, Tom, that's a shame.
We'll
man.
exclude Tom from the
Yeah.
voting.
Shame.
There goes my term.
Okay, so go ahead, sir.
But, well, I'm sorry. But the main idea is we've talked about a lot of different things. You know, fence, height, you know, buffers, lighting, time. You know, I'm a little bit worried about stormwater runoff. I mean, that's been a problem, and it's getting worse in our area. We talked with Miss Penny. She's a very nice, wonderful person. She's, you know, she's going to talk to some engineers, you know, kind of get a plan as far as make sure that we're still good with that. I think what we'd like to do, just like Mr. Wells said a moment ago, is what we'd like to do is to, if we could get a little more time, maybe put it off to another meeting. I know you guys probably hate to do that, but it would help us out a lot if you could give us that bit of time. We can work with the people, we can work with the Jimmy Hula people, and we can work with Miss Penny and Tim and all those people. And we can, you know, get a plan together and you guys might have other questions, but we can get it together, and it can be something where we can be, you know, not divisive. We can work together. We can all be comfortable with it. We can be happy with what's going to go behind our place. And the whole neighborhood, like you say, like, you know, going down to the ice cream place. You know,
Are you
we love
okay
that.
with items
Do you want a
1 through
gate?
5?
What's that?
Are you okay with items 1 through 5?
I'm not sure what items in 1 through 5 are, to be honest. Like I said, and that's where we,
Your
you know.
big concern was the buffer.
And the buffers, I guess probably what my concerns are would be safety, lighting, stormwater runoff.
Well, you're gonna have
That
less
kind of stuff.
stormwater because if you see the existing condition, that's all
Yeah.
asphalt.
That's creative.
Well-
So now you got vegetation, so you're actually improving in
actually
this
gonna be
condition.
better.
And I'm 100% behind that idea, but the Hunter property, which is put in right next door to that, we did that about a year ago. And that was supposed to be better for stormwater runoff. But over time, I've noticed that my stormwater's getting worse and worse and worse. Used to be my fig tree is towards the back of the property, right? Used to be I never had stormwater ever go past my fig tree, right? Now, stormwater runs, when we have a reasonable storm, it runs on the other side of my fig tree. If it gets much past there, then it's towards my house. And so I'm a little bit worried about that. I'm uncomfortable. And I'm not saying, you know, I mean, I think we can, you know, Miss Penny said that there's, you know, some things they can talk about and we can make sure it's good. But I've been assured 2 or 3 different times down the road, especially with the Hunter property, that this was going to be better. It's not affecting me positively. I've been having bad experiences.
What- What Hunter property, what are you talking about?
Well, it's
The new.
Property next door. to
One
where
next
this would be
door.
going.
yeah. Hold on.
Okay.
Oh, I can.
Oh,
there
now you
go.
really messed it up.
To the east.
Sorry, didn't get my steps in.
We're gonna need to get a
And-
This
credit, we're
property
gonna need to
right
get
here.
a credit
and-
card from you,
And I
sir.
really don't, I mean, like I said, we don't wanna inflict the poor, hula people with the hunter issues, I guess, and that's a whole separate issue and it's not their problem. But, we were, at
just
that
don't
point,
wanna
we hoped
repeat.
we were gonna have better results. We really haven't.
Okay.
And so, we've had a chain of disappointments. And I know that, again, that's not the hula people's fault, right? But if we can, like I said, if we can get a little time to where we can meet with Penny and the hula people and all that kind of stuff, make sure we get the right fence in, the right stuff, the right, that kind of deal. Like I said, parking spaces, I guess, that's really not, an issue for us necessarily.
Okay.
But we do want, lighting, car lights, how tall are the lights gonna be? Are they gonna be shining in? If they're, at midnight's a long time. I go to bed about 10, and I get up at 5.
Okay.
And anyway.
Very good.
So if we could do that, that would be a great help to us. And I think it would make it'll delay things, but it'll,
We get
we'll
them to
get
put
some
in a
peace.
gate for you, so you have easy access to the restaurant.
Let's
Would
get a
that be
gate. We
good?
could talk about that.
Okay.
Like I said. And then, yeah.
Well, obviously, we can't guarantee anything as far as that goes here today.
We understand.
But I do appreciate your input, and we were obviously gonna take that
And
into
like I said,
consideration.
we want all the help we can get from you
Okay.
guys. And like I said, we appreciate it.
All right, thank you. All right, so before I bring somebody else up here from the public, Pete, can you come back up for a minute? That's something that we didn't touch on, and that was parking lot lighting. What are we doing for parking lot lighting on this lot?
It's always an issue. The city site plan process requires that we show a lumen plan. So it shows what fixture we're gonna do, what the light,
Circumference?
shadow, I guess you don't, that's not right, but where the light goes. So I guarantee you, the lighting is gonna be such that it is all away from the properties to the north.
But I mean, we're not talking about high pole lights, are we? We're talking about island lights that are all down low?
I mean,
that keep the-
ideally, I love bollards. I think that'd
Right.
be awesome to see them. And if it goes with the Jimmy Hula's theme, because you can have them low and they look tropical.
Right, right.
So, we'll meet the city's land code as far as that goes. We hadn't really planned on how we were gonna light it. What I was gonna do is go down there and take a picture at night and see what kind of ambient light we've got, because there's stuff all over the place.
Yeah,
So
you're
we're
right.
not gonna need a whole lot of
Yeah,
light.
it's all lit up down there.
And that's just, and again, something
That's
that
always
slipped
an
by
issue.
me
I mean,
before,
we address that in every site plan, every time we do it, because it is an issue, especially when there's residences next door.
So I mean, we take a look at something like the Garlic down in New Smyrna, they don't have not one pole light in their, but the
Yeah, it
parking lot
looks
is well
great.
lit.
Well lit.
Because they're all just 4-foot bollard kind of things where the light stays low.
It's just one of these properties that we're gonna be looking at for a long time. that
Yeah.
We have to work with the residents because a lot of them will be budding residents. And while you're up here, Pete, let me ask you a question, because with the Dimitri building, they have underground retention underneath their building.
Right.
To help with runoff. Is that a
Well,
possibility?
We have two things to do. Yeah, we're doing a lot of underground now because land's so expensive. First off, the topographic survey, the elevations show that it is higher on the north property line and drains to the street. So none of this runoff is gonna go north.
That way.
Now, as part of our design process, we're showing bumper stops along there. We can show a 6-inch curb along there. That's sticking up this high. No water's gonna get across. It was already brought up, I think, Mr. Junko, about a landscape buffer. That's gonna improve things too. So that's one aspect of using the site as it is and not having any worries about water running off that way.
So it already
We still have
sheds
to
to
meet,
the
we
south.
still have some stormwater that we have to meet with the city, and most likely it's gonna be a trench drain that's, exfiltration.
So none of this water from this parking lot would ever shed to the north?
Well, it doesn't right now.
Okay.
I
What's-
mean,
what-
it's-
what's
and
the
we're not
grade
gonna
on it? What's-
change the paving.
I was gonna say, what's the grade on that, though? I mean, going from what, from 2 feet down?
It's probably less than what we'd like it to be. You want 1% minimum on asphalt to keep it from puddling. This is probably just barely that, but it's in pretty decent shape. So that means that even though it's been sitting there with water ponding on it over all this time, there's enough grade to get the water to run off of it.
And you said the existing parking stays except for the places where you're gonna cut
I
out.
would like to leave it just like, but, I mean, we're gonna be cutting off a lot of asphalt, but we're not gonna come in and repave.
Okay, all right, thank you,
We'll
Pete,
seal it
we'll
and
come
part-
back
and-
to you.
While
and-
he's up here, just I have
Okay,
one quick
go ahead.
question.
Yeah, I'd
I
like to-
appreciate that. And I think, Andy, where he went to, you made the comment about the possible bamboo buffer. But you were talking about the possibility of putting on your property, this property,
Well,
not,
we're gonna put, there was a comment from Mr. Wells about the quantity of, we don't have any choice. We've agreed that we are gonna meet that requirement. So
right.
you take
But what I'm asking is really, you're not talking about putting any on that 4-foot strip that he was
No.
referring to, because that's
No,
separate.
because we don't have control of that
Exactly.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
But we wouldn't be against it if that's something that we could work out that he wanted to do.
Understood.
See, here's what happens, and it's just my perspective is, so you go in there, and regardless of a fence or a wall, you're gonna see it. And so now how do we minimize the impact of the visual of a big-ass wall in somebody's backyard, excuse my language? But if we, you know, and if some of that could go on the opposite side.
Oh, I agree with that. I
To
agree
fill
with the
in,
concept. I just wanna
create
make sure
that
that we're
green
not
wall
talking about.
effect, but,
But who maintains it?
yeah, so.
Well, it'd be on his property, so it's his.
That's what I'm
and
saying.
So you want
That's
something
where
that
your
isn't
problem
gonna
is.
be a maintenance problem.
But you're agreeing-
Bamboo pretty well takes care of itself.
What you're saying is you would agree to landscape, initially to landscape Mr. Bean's side of the wall if he would allow you to do so, but the ongoing maintenance of that landscape would be on Mr. Bean.
That's correct. Okay.
And you have a road further on down
Yeah,
heading
there's
west, so
a,
then you
there's a,
can't do
that,
it.
that was, Coral Way or something
Yeah,
like
Coral
that.
Way.
It was a city street, it was a right-of-way, and it became vacated. And so they had to maintain access easements to the people that were west of that. So we have a 24-foot road, 4 feet from the road to the property line. So the 4-foot strip is what would be, he sent us an email, and I think it's in your package, that said he did that, and he landscaped that on his own, and he put the wood fence up on his own. So, these improvements would be on the property line on our side. If we could administratively take, we got a lot of plants we gotta stick inside a 10-foot buffer.
Who owns that?
So if we could take some of that and put it over on the other side, he gets a benefit. I mean, it's just more plants on his side. The same thing for the fellow that came in that was adjacent to him.
So who owns that 4 feet?
He does.
It's,
It was
North of
vacated
our-
from the
That is
city.
north of our property line.
once it was vacated,
We do
the
not own
property
it.
lines got extended, he has the
It didn't go
rights to
50/50,
the
it went
front
to him.
private road?
Right.
Okay, all right. Any more questions of Pete real quick, because we're gonna come back to him. Okay. Anybody else from the audience come speak to this? Come on up.
I can be quick. I think that a lot of things have been said. Hi, I'm Shannon Banna. I live at 114 Coral Way, so I'm the property in between Mr. Bean and then Andy that spoke to you earlier. I think really, I just wanted to articulate that, and I appreciate certainly the perspectives of all of you worrying about the residents. We certainly do care, and this is coming on rather quickly, and we're really asking for your support in an additional amount of time to continue discussions. I do absolutely appreciate that the folks are attempting to be good neighbors, but a lot of these details don't feel completely formal. So the variance is one thing, and I think accommodations to the variance are helpful, but it is obviously, again, we expect a restaurant is one thing, but it obviously will have impacts on sound, on security, on lighting, on the water. I mean, it affects the property. So we're just asking for your support and a little more time to continue discussing. For instance, Mr. Bean hasn't even really gotten the opportunity to hear some of these things that are being talked about today. So
Okay,
appreciate your consideration.
That's really gonna be up to the
Thank you.
applicant, though.
yeah. Anybody else? Come on
Oh,
up,
don't
Debbie.
let this one up.
Oh,
No.
Thank you for
So
your
popular.
Debbie Connors with the Port Orange South Daytona Chamber of Commerce. I just want to cheer this project on. The Economic Development Committee at the Chamber really works to bring quality businesses to Port Orange and to support those businesses and help them be successful. I think this is a business brought to us by a family that's been in this area for as long as I can remember, and probably before Stephanie was born, but they have been good quality business people in this area, and they're bringing a good project here into an infill area that, you know, we're always looking to get quality things here. I think Mr. Zahn has really worked as an engineer to make this project to where it's livable for the neighbors. You know, I respect the neighbors, and they're being very nice about this project. I would love to see this project come here and fill in that area. I think it's a perfect project for that area, and so I hope you will consider it very positively.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thanks, Deb.
Anybody else?
Chair?
Okay, yeah, go ahead, John.
Just an observation that might expedite. I think it's pretty comforting to know that we probably got items 1 through 5 seem to be in the bag, or there's no contest. But the item 6 is obvious that both sides are in fact working toward a mutual agreement. I find that if the pace of 1 through 5 was reviewed today, and item 6 could be revised later on, once both parties mutually agree on something, it may help the progress of this, and also administrative delays on having to do this whole item all over again.
Well, I think they've conceded a lot. I mean, I think they've conceded about
Yeah.
as much as they can concede as far as that back buffer. I mean, they can't give any more than what they've already given.
I'm not
I don't know
saying
where- I
that,
don't
it's
know where
just the
you're going.
quality of the sound buffing, the materials being used, they know something is going to go there. It's just formalities that,
Details.
as it's been already been voiced, that they don't have a direct agreement upon.
But we can talk about it right now and get it
Yeah.
taken care of.
Well, I
mean, it's
think
not
what we
something that-
have here is we've got a couple of
No, I want one more.
propositions kind of thing here of what could be, or what, may it
Let's nail
be
it
a
down.
fence, may it be a block, may it be this, landscape, and where there. So we're down to, okay, and let's just say that 1 through 5 are relatively minor
Right.
in scale compared to this one, which is the most important, in my opinion, gonna be one of the most important. So Pete, it comes down to like one of these deals, let's make a deal, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, let's make a deal.
Lance?
it would be my opinion, being a builder and doing some development, that a block wall is going to suffice for several things. May it be security, may it be for sound, may it be for light to a certain distance. And then from that, then we get into just landscaping. What are we doing to buffer the wall on one side and or the other? Okay, and again, we've already talked about the lighting aspect. So now it's just a matter of, where do you put a wall? And if it was gonna be on there, you gotta put it to 1 inch inside the property line. And like you said, you gotta do a footer that's,
Cantilever.
concentric, that.
Yeah.
I've done a bunch,
you
that's
know,
not a problem.
I just finished one.
Yeah.
It's the
Hold on, we're not going
cantilever,
out for
but
bid yet, Johnny.
it prevents from tipping.
But again, it could be done, okay? But then again, then we come back to, what's the visual of this side of the wall? This side of the wall, we know we're gonna landscape it, so now it comes to what's on the other side of the wall, but
But you can only go a certain point till the road.
Well, let me point out something.
okay,
The wall isn't under consideration.
it's not,
No.
okay?
It's not an item that's on this.
What's the buffer?
We know that we have to provide a wall
Right.
or a fence. And quite frankly, we don't care if it's a block wall or a PVC wall. And we'll be glad to work with the neighbors, and I can draw up some exhibits. I can show them what it looks like and what we're talking about, and they can pick it.
Okay,
I don't care.
okay.
Item 6 is a 10-foot buffer.
Is the amount of the buffer?
That isn't gonna change. We don't have any room to do any better than that.
Well,
okay?
it's not that it's not gonna change.
Same amount of plants and trees and
There's
whatever.
more room to.
Well,
put
it's
those
not that
plants.
it's not gonna change, Pete, it's a matter of what we get approved here
Well,
today.
Yeah, that's
or if we do.
correct. That's
Okay,
correct.
so,
And we need to have the variances in size because it is infill, because we've got a tight site, and so we're forced to come to you for a variance to allow that. But, the wall isn't the issue. I mean, if it is with you guys, well, you can put any, requirements you want on there if you, as conditions of this, but we'll be happy to work with them about it.
oh, okay, all right. Newton?
I have a question for Penny. Penny, what would the timeline be on this? I want to know, I know that if we approve this tonight, Mr. Zahn and is not coming down to pull building permits tomorrow.
No, they would have to submit a site plan, and it would go through the Development Review Committee. Once all the technical issues have been addressed, then a development order can be issued, and then they can move forward to their pre-construction meeting, get their plans approved for construction, and then get their building permits.
Will this have to be approved by city council after
No,
us?
it's just a
Okay.
site plan. It's not, they're not,
And, okay, so if we approve this tonight, you're looking at 30 days, 60 days?
It's all just the timing of when they submit their site plan.
That takes at least
We have
30
a-
days on a site plan. for
Yeah,
the back.
we have a 10-day turnaround on staff comments once they submit. So every time when they submit, we have 10 days, working days to review their plans. It goes to the DRC meeting, they get their technical comments, they resubmit at their timing. Whenever they resubmit, we re-review it again until there's no technical comments and we're able to issue a development order. And no technical comment means it's met all the land development code requirements, and then if the variance is approved, those variances.
You good with that?
I'm good with that. I'm wanting to understand then that we're probably 40, 50 days or more away from
Final
fi-
approval. and
final approval
starting
and
Do stuff.
getting the shovel,
Getting all
getting
their
the shovel
permits.
moving.
Okay.
With that, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion.
Okay.
If you will, did you want to offer? There was a couple of things that were discussed with this revised concept plan, and it sounds like based on the discussion of the planning commission, that the planning commission is a little bit more favorable towards the modifications that they've made. It doesn't necessarily change the variance, it just kind of adjusts things a little bit. So I've tried to jot down how that motion would look. And so basically, it sounds like the planning commission would like to condition a couple
I
things.
think, I think we can do it, as long as the motion is subject to the amendments discussed by Mr. Zahn, which were the amendments to numbers 4 and 6, 4 changing from the 16-foot to the 10-foot, and 6.
10.67.
I'm sorry, 10.67.
It might be just cleaner just from working with, when we get into the engineering, to say like no less than 10 feet in width.
I was gonna say, no,
Just to be, because that .67, you never know when you start getting in there and designing, you know.
Well, I
just-
mean, that's
but-
8 inches.
but I
That's what
just
the
wanna
wall
make
is.
sure, Penny, I just wanna make sure that the back buffer is still gonna be the
Yeah, and that would be the next one I think that
because,
Matt was gonna
because if the
mention.
wall's gonna go back on it's going on the property line, or it doesn't have to be moved in 3 feet.
No.
If it's a concrete wall, what the code requires is, the code states that you start off with, you have a 3-foot setback. Unless you can provide technical information that shows you don't need that full 3 feet to install it and to maintain it.
Okay.
So if they can show justification, like whatever kind of specs that can show that they don't need that full 3-foot setback to install the wall and to get in there and paint it and maintain it, like if it's like a concrete wall where you just slide in the panels or something like that, you don't need full 3 feet. You can justify that. That's not like a variance you have to get approved. It's just, it allows for that in the code.
So,
You just provide that justification.
so hopefully, well, I mean, 'cause that's one of the things. Would they be able to prove
Yes.
that?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Can we have the clerk
Um,
put us back to the people?
No.
You're done. Oh, okay. Front row.
I didn't do it.
Where's Jake? Where's Jake? Did we pay the bill?
You went home.
So that's the only thing I was concerned about, is that if this doesn't change, that 10 feet or so on that back property doesn't change.
Yeah, it sounds like what Matt was getting at, that would be the second.
So that's the second amendment announced by the applicant, which is, instead of going to a 4.5 minimum buffer, this for the north property line, it'd be going to a 10-foot minimum, variable from 20 foot to 10-foot minimum.
Okay,
No less than 10.
but when we say that the buffer is gonna be no less than 10 feet, where's the language that says that even if all the landscaping has still gotta go in the 10 feet, even though it's 20 feet where the landscaping,
That was
right?
one of the conditions in the staff report of
Okay.
approval. So
You
right
can make
now,
that a condition of your
Yeah.
approval of that variance. So for number 6, that would be a condition to your approval of number 6 to reduce it, that you'd still have to plant the 20-foot in the 10-foot.
Is that language in here, or is that what I'm?
That would be something you need to include in the motion if you want to condition your approval of any of these variances.
Okay.
If they're doing bamboo, they can meet that requirement.
We're not approving these each individually, we're approving
This
them
is
as
one.
package,
One
right?
motion.
Just one thing.
Okay, so,
But we can still put a condition on number 6. Okay.
the other
And 4.
option, and it would be up to the applicant if they'd be okay with this as well, is there had been, in some of the email communication and discussions with some of the residents, they were asking for a higher wall. That does not require a variance, but you can condition it. The code allows them to go up to 10 feet. There's been discussions about if it could just be an 8-foot wall, that would be great. It's not a variance, but you can add it as part of your conditions that you would
Where's
want.
it, okay, but the measurement goes from where? I mean, because if you're gonna be 6 feet on
On our side.
Ula's side, you're gonna be 8 feet on the other side already.
It's 10, that's correct.
Because you're already 2 feet elevated.
Correct.
Yeah, you're 2 feet
However,
elevated already.
The gentleman on the easterly portion here, where the
Okay.
mouse is,
Yeah, right at the
we
corner.
got another, right along this wall, that 2 feet doesn't exist. So if you want a 10-foot here and an 8-foot here, that gives them both essentially 10 feet. And I'm gonna offer to meet with them in the lobby afterwards. They can be involved in this fence design.
Are you willing to table this till next month?
No, I'd like to move on with it because we've got so much.
Okay, just asking.
But the wall seems to be an issue with them. We'll condition it to 8 feet if you wish, and then we'll work out the details with them. But
I like that.
You know, the 10-foot,
Because then the lights would be pretty much basically not even.
Oh, yeah.
You have 2 conditions and 2 amendments. So the first condition is what's in the staff report is to, that they provide the same quantity of landscaping that's required for a 20-foot buffer in the reduced buffer width. And the second condition would be an 8-foot tall fence or wall in that north buffer. And then the 2 amendments are what Matt just read would be that for number 6, that variable width would have a minimum width no less than 10 feet, and that the distance from the first parking space to the right-of-way would be no less than 10 feet.
Number 4.
Okay, and then what about maybe putting some landscaping on the other side of the wall, no?
That's gonna be entirely up
You
to them.
know,
I mean, if you have conversation with them, but I don't think that's
we
gonna
can
add
do
any
that 'cause
buffer to
it's
it.
off the property line.
It's got to be
But-
to meet the
but we'll-
requirements.
Okay.
I would like to.
I'm just asking.
I mean, that's
Hey,
not
man, I'm
something
just
we,
asking.
that's between them and the property
Lance.
owners
Yes.
later on.
I would like to condition that it's a wall instead of a fence, though. I think that would be more impactful for them
That's fine.
than.
Okay,
We can do it.
Do we wanna find out?
ready for this?
Yeah, so.
It's gonna be
well,
I'm not even
somebody needs to
trying
They're
to
gonna
make
agree to a wall more so than they're gonna agree to a fence. So,
I'll second it.
here's gonna be the thing about a block wall is gonna last a lot longer. It's gonna be more durable in the long run. It's gonna be something that's gonna be less maintenance in the long run than a fence that could fall down and et cetera. Because you're gonna obviously be, you're gonna be designing this as a retaining wall or
Fill
screen
with
wall, but,
rebar.
right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it'll
Okay.
have a footer rebar and it'll have filled cells. and-
Stucco on the backside, or what is the finish? Is it just
The
painted
finish
block?
would be painted. Well, actually, what we had talked about on our side of it was a mural. And they said, yes, you can do that, but you can't put words and make it advertising.
Right.
Well, if you're
So
gonna
it'd be
put, if
kinda
you're gonna
cool
put
to-
plant buffer, it's not gonna be seen anyway.
Yeah, bingo.
I mean,
Okay.
there's no sense in
That's
doing
right,
anything
after
to
we
it.
put all
But
this
on the
plant-
outside, but who maintains
on
the
the
outside?
other side,
But
yeah.
Who maintains the outside?
I don't know the ruling on that. I've got one and it's on my property, my adjacent, neighbor painted it his color and he uses it like it's his, so.
Yeah, 'cause we had an issue with Booth Bowery with Cumberland Farms, who was gonna
Yeah.
maintain the outside of the wall.
They would be responsible.
They have to.
Yeah.
I don't know the
so,
answer to
Okay,
that.
they are. I'll give you guys, okay.
It would be the commercial wall.
100%, it's on their property. Okay, I got you.
That's why we require enough space to be able to maintain it.
So in the event that
There's a
you gotta
fence
go over there and
coming
paint it, then you gotta paint the other, you gotta,
Yeah.
go
Paint both
coral away and
sides.
paint it, but, okay.
So if you put a plant
Alright.
buffer on that side too, then they would be responsible for that as well.
All right,
I'm
well,
trying.
yeah,
Good.
okay.
All right,
Ready.
who's
All
the,
right, where are we going with this?
Are we ready for
Somebody
the
do it.
Hold on.
I think Newton's got the itch
Hold
for
on,
it.
one-
Go
hold on
for
one
it.
second.
Do it, Newton.
Hold on one second, is there anybody else gonna care to speak to this while we're here? Okay, now, go.
All right, move to approve case number 17900000001 with the conditions that the same quantity of landscape materials as installed as would be required for the normal LDC buffer, that an 8-foot concrete wall be installed on the north landscape buffer.
Could you say masonry, please?
Masonry wall, amend that to masonry wall.
You're saying up to 8 feet
No, 8 feet.
or 8 feet?
8 feet.
Really?
Because you have about
And-
10 feet buffer on them.
That
Can't be on the other side.
the land, that the vegetation there be a continuous bamboo curtain. And
I'd just like to, rather than restrict the landscaping, that it's a 10-foot landscape buffer.
Yeah.
Because the city has a bunch of requirements for all kinds of plants to go in there.
so change that it will have a 10-foot,
So I believe the.
we'll have the buffer with the landscape that's to include bamboo.
I believe the staff recommendation is a 20-foot buffer planted in the 10-foot space. Is
Yeah,
that-
20 foot
Yes.
of plants
Not
inside
necessarily
of that,
speaking
but
to what kind.
we,
Yeah.
the bamboo is what was mentioned by the residents, and I happen to like it, so it's in my motion.
Pete, is
Well,
that
you
something
already-
that
you
we
already
determined to be
really narrow
more
that.
sound worthy?
It's gonna be lush, because we take all the plants, the plant count that goes into a 20-foot landscape buffer, and we're gonna plant them in a 10-foot landscape buffer. And there are gonna be certain trees that will be a shade tree, that might be a ligustrum, it might be a holly rather than oak, because it's under power lines. The next level down is gonna be crepe myrtle. The next level down is gonna be a shrub like Indian hawthorn or something like this, and then you got ground cover. So from our side, it's gonna look wonderful, it's gonna be thickly landscaped in there, but, so that's what the intent was, and it's in the staff report, it's very clear that it will be a 10-foot landscape buffer on the north property line. The plants will meet the requirements for the 20-foot wide landscape buffer.
Okay, I'm sorry, Newton, continue
Okay.
your motion.
Okay, so we've got the 10-foot buffer will contain the landscape required for a 20-foot buffer, normally required, that we will have an 8-foot masonry wall. We're going to try and include bamboo in our landscape to further block sound and light from escaping. And the distances of the buffers on item 6 and item 4 would be changed to 10 foot at the north side, and the reduction to, I believe it was 10.67 feet or thereabouts.
10 feet.
10 feet.
Minimum.
10 feet minimum on the entranceway to the first parking space.
10 feet minimum on
Could
the
you
back.
also add 1, 2, 3, 5, because they're part of the variance too, and then you don't have to repeat all that language.
Yes, include all the other 1, 2, 3, and 5 variances in the motion. So I'm moving.
Second.
Okay, that's good.
That's quite the motion.
That is a long
Get all that
motion,
down?
and it's been seconded, so I guess.
Call
I have
the
a
roll.
motion and I have a second. Any further discussion from this panel? Huh? What'd you say?
Repeat the motion.
Repeat it for me.
I'll ask my clerk to repeat it for you. Further discussion here?
No.
Nope.
I'm fine.
Any further discussion from anybody? I think what we have here is we have a project that is doing what they can to be a good neighbor. And I think we have a good project that we're gonna infill a dead piece of property with. We have a client out here who's willing to work with the neighbors, and, you know, with that being said, we'll go to the vote.
Very
You'll call the
happy.
roll, please.
John Dunzo.
Yes.
Maria Mills Burnett.
Yes.
Bo Wolfme.
Yes.
Mike Romanio.
Yes.
Thomas Jordan.
Yes.
Newton White.
Yes.
Lance Green.
Yes. Pete,
Very much.
you know, we're gonna be looking at you, buddy.
Yes, sir.
Gotta look good.
You're a man of your word.
But
We know
They
that.
have
Food
steak
better be
tacos
good.
too, you know, it's not all fish.
Food
Thank you,
better be
Pete.
good, or I'm coming
Good
out.
luck with it.
Food critic over there.
The food critic. That's right. I want to know about the food.
Aw, they're gonna leave us? You guys should stay around.
Yeah.
They were like, if the next one takes half as long as that one, we're out of here.
It's right next door.
Yep.
Case number 17-90000002, variance at 79 Dunlawton Avenue. Penelope? Hold on one second.
Yeah.
Not your turn yet.
Just present to us first.
He was in a hurry.
Clocking in, man.
He wants to talk us out of it.
All right. All right. So this variance, Penelope Cruz Planner, sorry. This variance is right next door, the property to the one we were just discussing, also on the north side of the bridge, also in the Port Orange Town Center CRA, directly adjacent to the Halifax River. Currently developed with a restaurant, a commercial marina, and a retail store. And the applicant is requesting to approve for approval of 2 variances. One of them is to reduce the west building setback adjacent, I can't.
Adjacent?
Adjacent, sorry, and we're on live. adjacent to the Halifax River from 15 feet to 0 feet, and to allow for a thatched palm roof in lieu of the required metal roof. According to the applicant, the restaurant has had the existing outdoor seating for at least the 17 years that they've been owners, and protection from the weather has been an ongoing issue. It's been currently provided by individual. You can see right here in this picture these individual thatched roof umbrellas and also these vinyl umbrellas here. And however, those were damaged during Hurricane Matthew, and what they're proposing is to construct one pavilion that would cover the entire seating area. This is just an example of one that covers an entire area. They're not asking to expand the existing seating, but just cover it all with one overhang instead of individual umbrellas. And so with that, I will turn it over to the applicant unless you have any questions of me.
Absolutely, we do. Newton, anything for Penelope yet?
No.
Mike?
Is this going to be a solid building, or is this just going to be?
No, just an open.
It's just going to be an open, like a.
It's a pole structure?
I believe so, yeah, similar to what you see right here. It would just be.
So it's
the
not
poles.
enclosed.
I mean, but it's gonna have structural requirements.
Oh, yeah, it
and,
has to meet Florida building code.
et cetera, right? Anything for Penelope?
No, I think I've seen something similar to this in Ponds Inlet. What's that? You probably know.
Jerry's?
Yeah, yeah.
They got something like that going in New Smyrna too.
So the only
It's pretty
reason,
sound.
the only reason we have a variance request is for the thatch roof.
Well, there's
Oh, the
two.
setback.
There's two. The setback, because the existing seating is right up to the river, and so they want to be able to maintain that location because there's not really anywhere else to move it. So the one is the setback, the setback to be able to have it still right there by the river, to have that waterfront seating. And then the second one's the material, because it's in the town center, and the town center requires all roofs to be metal.
Let me ask you something, Penny. Does this add additional seating?
No.
So it won't have to add additional parking? Okay.
All right. I can say that in the my 40 years of drinking beers, I've drank many of them under most all those umbrellas down there.
You didn't care
So
about the roof.
come on up.
I'm not even
Just
sitting next to
never
him. I
in the
can't
rain.
even kick him.
He incriminates himself.
Oh, I'll kick you. You kick Lance.
Good evening, I'm David Graham, and my wife and I own DJ's Deck. And the variance is fairly clear. We have an opportunity to fix the tikis that we have existing now. They were pretty much destroyed by Hurricane Matthew. So we see an opportunity here to not only enhance the property, but to give it that old Florida look, which is what we're all about anyway. I mean, I think the tikis really allude to that. And it also gives us an opportunity to allow our guests to have more comfort. You know, we all know how those thunderstorms come rolling up, and it is a cattle herd running into the small restaurant. So we're looking at this as an opportunity, not only to enhance the property there at Port Orange Marina, but also the property there underneath the Dunlawton Bridge for the city of Port Orange. It's not going to add any more seating. The light and sound variance, it's not going to have any impact of that at all. Matter of fact, it will most likely, if anything, reduce it because it's now all undercover. We do have some music on Sundays, but it's very, it's acoustic guitar. It's not very loud at all. Never had a complaint from the neighbors whatsoever on any of that. Lighting will be reduced because now all the lights will be underneath the thatched hut. So that's the reason why we're looking for these two variances. Obviously, with the Halifax River being right there on the line, that's why we're requesting a zero variance, because it's not going to impact the sound or the water or anything like that for our neighbors.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of our applicant? Newton? You got any questions of him?
No, I don't.
Tom?
I'm fine.
Mike?
Good.
Anybody?
Is this essentially what it's gonna look like?
That's pretty much what it's going to look like, yes. It's if you reference it as a pole barn, the structure is similar to that, but it's going to have the pylons will be tiki carved. It won't just be a pole, and the structure underneath will be decorated such with the proper lighting and air circulation for our guests.
Can the Port Orange Wood Carving Club come down and do those?
They probably could, yeah.
He probably will. Lance is part of him. He carries the knife everywhere.
You good?
I love the concept. If it would reduce the line for me, I'd be happier, but otherwise I'm good.
John?
No, you know, you see the thatch roofs and you see the vinyl roofs. There's a conflict, but you're uniforming the whole thing.
Yes.
The unity and it's, I feel comfortable under those and I like them and the look and the feeling. So I like the idea.
How's that gonna hold up in a storm?
Well, that was one of the questions that we discussed with our contractor, and we actually went down to one that was built at the Hilton in Cocoa Beach. We went down there before the storm, Hurricane Matthew, and we went down there after the storm, and it's just fine. Now, we're going to ask him to do one more thing for us. Right now, our tikis have nets over them, and what that does is two things. It keeps the birds from pecking at it, and it does help the fronds to lay down for a long period of time. So we're going to require a mesh netting to go across. You can't see it. It'll blend with the fronds, but it'll certainly keep the thatch roof
Tight.
looking good for a
Packed,
long
yeah.
time.
They'll probably keep critters out of there too.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's underneath it, or is it just?
Well, if you look at it, we don't have a picture of that. It's actually, you can see the sticks of the fronds, and then it's tightly woven. So when you look at it, you have straight lines of the fronds going all the way down, and then it's a flat mesh underneath. And then we'll obviously, have Kona Beer support us with some of the decorations, some nice LEDs. We're not going to junk it up, I can assure you that, because we still have an image that we want to portray for the old Florida concept. It's not, we're not going to have a bar look. It's going to be a nice restaurant look.
Is it flammable?
There is a flammable retardant. Matter of fact, I think when the contractor met with the city, the fire marshal was included in that, and he did say that he has no concerns whatsoever on these fronds.
Sure, yeah.
Sure. Penny, now since that's in the CRA, is that
No?
counts under CRA?
No,
She
ma'am,
just
we're,
emailed it in.
yeah, we're okay with that picture, ma'am. Yeah, thank you, though.
Now this is,
Okay.
this is in the counts under CRA, and this is
Yes,
a
sir.
part of our vernacular theme. Is that okay to have this staff?
That's why
group?
that variance is in
Okay,
front of you, is because it is in the
I wasn't
town
sure if
center
you could change
CRA.
it because it's the town center CRA. Okay.
Yeah, it's because of those architectural requirements,
Okay.
but we do have code amendments that are probably gonna be coming before you soon in the near future to kind of revise those, based on discussions and workshops that we've had with the council, to kind of, provide some more flexibility with some of those requirements and encourage development.
For the 20 years old.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody want to care to speak to this? I think here's an opportunity for some business in Port Orange to enhance his business by enhancing his property. This is only going to make things better. It's going to look better. It's going to be better, and probably going to bring more business to the area. And you got to applaud any business owner who is willing to step up to put his money into his business to make his business look better and be better within the community.
It's gonna attract attention.
I really do think it's a great improvement.
I think
So with that being said,
Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve case number 17-90000002.
Second.
No,
I have a second here with Tom. Sorry, you'll have to wait for the next one. Any further discussion? Anybody?
Always get gypped
Call the
being a
roll.
girl.
John Junko,
Yes.
Maria Middleton,
Yes.
Bo Bothany,
Yes.
Mike Arminio.
Yes.
Thomas Jordan,
Yes.
Newton White,
Yes.
Lance Green.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
That whole deck down under is gonna look really cool down there.
Yeah.
Next,
Well, I mean,
when you
we're
guys starting on it?
we're starting to grow.
You're gonna wait until after October though, right? Tough. Right.
Glad you're not in Texas right now. All right, moving right along. Case number 17-4000002, Second Amendment to the Groves PCD. Tim?
In Birmingham Community Development. Currently, the Groves PCD is located at the corner of Madeline and Clyde Morris, the area, pretty much that whole entire area that's shown here. It's been zoned PCD since about 1986. But what we're doing, this proposed amendment is only going to pertain to the kind of the pink area, phase 2 is what it's called. What the applicant's requesting to do is basically similar to what you've seen in a number of other PCD amendments we've had from older PCDs, is basically just bring up the current uses to be consistent with community commercial permitted uses, update the setback requirements lot area requirements to be similar to community commercial. So that's what they're proposing in this one. In addition to that, they're also asking for 2 deviations from the land development code that pertain to signage. The first one is going to pertain to having an off-site signage, which could basically advertise any tenant which could be developed in this complex. It's going to be very similar to the one that was approved through the PCD up here at Palmetto Point for the Walmart Center there, where it's at that angle there. Any tenant can identify in there. The reason why they're asking for that is because some of the lots are in the back of the build area then. And then also, you can see here where Clyde Morris makes a curve. These lots right here would basically be pretty much blocked by the vegetation there. So that's one of the reasons why the applicant's requesting that off-site sign to advertise anyone within that center. The second variance is the code requires if you're going to have an identification sign or a monument sign, it's got to be basically on a lot, basically the road frontage. In this case, basically the layout, there's going to have some lots that don't have direct roadway frontage. So what they're looking to do is to be allowed to have 32 square foot sign area identification sign. So if you pull in the parking lot, you can be identified to see that specific tenant there. So they're making two deviation requests as part of this PCD amendment here. The one is to have the proposed off-site sign here at the, as shown on this concept plan, which can advertise any tenant within this area. And the second would be allowed to have the 32 square foot proposed identification signs on these lots that are identified, basically don't have the direct frontage on the Clyde Morris Boulevard. Staff is recommending approval of the PCD amendment, and the applicant is also here to further discuss their request.
One of my favorite things to talk about, signs.
We're gonna be here a while.
Newton, I'll start with you.
I'm gonna start with signs.
Anything with?
Absolutely, I'm gonna start with signs. This monument sign that has we have the picture of here in figure 2. Is there anything in place at this point to stop it from keep it from looking like the large blue signs that are around the Altamira Village development? Not to name names of whose signs those are, but the large blue signs that are on Dunlawton.
Well, those signs are the same code requirements as all other signs in Port Orange. Basically, if a monument sign, if a shopping center sign, that's allowed to have 6 tenants, and basically we can't regulate the tenants that come in here.
Well, luckily, that's
basically, as long as it's a tenant that's a permitted use here, they'd be able to have a sign on that location.
Luckily, that's
What's
not
your
at a corner,
problem with that
like-
sign?
Well, because it's at the light.
Signs.
Signs?
Okay.
You can speak to if it's
One
during the
business has
stop-
2 large ones.
Yes, yes.
I mean,
I
the
gotcha.
applicant you could speak to the applicant if they basically, consider, basically our code right now has a minimum requirement for the panel size. It has to be at least 8 square feet in size. The applicant could discuss basically if you're concerned about size panel sign for a tenant, you can speak to the applicant regarding a maximum sign requirement. That's something the applicant would have to speak to.
You know, I'm one of those guys, that I don't believe there's a one-size-fit-all when it comes to the signs, but we'll talk about that some other time.
Waffle House.
You do
Unless you're Waffle House.
Yes.
I didn't say
I
that.
think of
Hey, well,
everything.
these other individual ones
Me
are
too.
limited to 32 square feet, so we got those ones limited.
Mike, anything for Tim?
Yeah, where are we at on the LED signs going forward? I mean, I know you guys are supposed to be looking at the codes and possibly having, because I'm looking at down that Clyde Morris corridor and those signs I think are ugly. I mean, not for nothing, the way that you got just the name of the business in there. LED to me, hopefully is the future, and a lot of cities have already seen that. So are we anywhere near changing where we can have LED signs for businesses instead of gas stations alone?
I mean, the only thing we have in our code right now for an LED sign is basically for shopping centers. Basically, so
What's a
one would be an
shopping
option basically there to identify the tenants. So that's currently in the code right now, and could apply
is.
for this monument. Basically identify multi-tenant sign. It could apply there. So they want to have one panel with an LED, so they can rotate there. It'd have to comply with all the requirements in the code, but that's available then.
Yep.
Individual tenants, though, like the McDonald's, they would not be able to have an LED sign at this time in our code.
Right. Well, I'm not concerned about them. I'm just concerned about the look. And honestly, when I see these signs go up, and every time we approve these with multiple tenants, I just think that's the ugliest damn thing for a city. It's supposed to be progressive. We're antiquated with our signs. And I've
I mean,
always said
currently
that.
it allows those, for those multi-tenants to have the LED, but we've just seen basically, they kind of came with like 2 or 3 when we first started it, and they've kind of switched back to basically doing the
You know, we can't tell them that's what they gotta do, but I just think a cleaner,
It's an
better,
option for 'em.
nicer look than what these look like. I mean, I hate them.
The Waffle House has the same size sign as a Publix. I don't get it. I mean, if we're a progressive
operate.
city, that thing should be proportionally sized to the business, but anyway, we'll go somewhere else with that. John?
I am going to say that this is reasonable due to the off sign of those businesses, and we do want to promote business, and that seems like a fair request, so I have nothing to say. I like it.
Maria?
They don't want to take that old Food Lion building and do something with that, huh?
They're still, Food Lion's still paying the rent.
They're still paying the rent.
I know.
Well, it's difference on that, but is this
Think
the
for
same
10?
property owner as the Food Lion building?
No.
This applicant is a separate property owner.
Okay, thanks. Come on up.
Also, just want to point one thing about the MDA too. Basically, there's a lot of the language in there in terms of landscape requirements, parking. That all basically just defaults back to what's required in the land development code then. So for the most likely, it's going to follow our land development code in terms of buffers, screening requirements, parking ratios.
Now, they went out there and cleared this land
Long time ago.
based on this being a more sellable type of property kind of thing, right?
Yeah, basically they had to do some clearing of the soil
This is the
replacement there
first
for the
step.
sale, and I think they were trying to do this to make it all so more marketable then.
Right,
But
right.
I'll let the applicant further discuss the process.
Okay. I know Dwight watches POG TV, so if you don't clock in, he might not be paying you, so.
He's on vacation, so,
Oh, so he doesn't know.
hopefully he's not watching.
We're worldwide.
Live on Facebook, too.
State your name for the record.
Yeah. My name is Mark Corrett. I'm the Director of Planning and Landscape Architecture for Zem Cohen Associates. And I'm here tonight representing Futureland Inc., who is owned by Dr. Tahir Khalil, and he's a local cardiologist that you guys might be familiar with. First of all, I want to thank staff for the positive recommendation, and they've worked with us throughout this whole process. In terms of some of the communities that we work with, Port Orange staff is real good in terms of keeping us in communication, so we appreciate that. Client purchased this property 12 years ago in 2002. It was right at the height of the building boom. The economy was great. Food Lion was still open. And then 2 years later, the recession hit, and that was 2007. So while there has been a recovery in real estate that you probably know far better than me, you're experiencing it every month, there's still some challenges because on this particular site, the Food Lion is closed. They closed every Food Lion in the state of Florida in 2012. There's not an obvious hard corner any longer. This was purchased from the original developer. The way the original developer had that hard corner where they put the fast food restaurant, and usually what they do is they take that hard corner, they'll sell that for about 85% of the entire purchase price of the property, get their basis down, and so they have very low basis in the shopping center. But what they did, both the prior owner sold the whole south half off to our client, like I said, in 2005. So the current plan, though, is for the property that was done back in the 80s. I'll just sort of show it to you right now. You see, it's just basically the current plan is continuation of the existing development, which is not no provisions were made for constructing what would be one continuous strip shopping center. And of course, with the closed.
Would you open that and just show it to our people real quick behind you?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, this is the original, which is the original plan had most of the square footage actually down to the south.
Mm-hmm.
Need a copy for the clerk.
And do you guys have an agreement with the other property owner? Because I know we had an issue with that with the Publix on Nova. We had two different property owners there, and they had a little conflict there
Yeah,
with refacing and stuff like that. You guys in good terms with them, or?
Yeah, and the only agreement that I'm aware of that is in place is for access. So we will use one of the existing accesses, and you can see on our plan that there was a.
But if you're what I'm saying is that like you're upgrading this property, so that's gonna make that look old, and it's not gonna look like a continuous property.
Well, but here's the thing, Mike, it's gonna be individual parcels, could be, potentially could be individual buildings on that, and not just a continuation of a shopping center, you know what I mean, but.
Just saying what we had with like the public shop, we had
Yeah.
Paul Hall and then the owner of the public shop.
Yeah. This is the old plan, which was, like I said, is just an extension. Basically, there was 130,000 square feet, and the majority of it in that original plan was actually on the south end. That's not how it got constructed. There was
It was all
first-
one owner at the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And there was a first amendment to the PCD. They kind of created, moved all that square footage, some of that to the north. But, as we're experiencing, retail's changing. Almost
Tell me
all
about
of it's going online.
But
You can even buy mattresses online now, which is kind of incredible to me. Food and beverage, is strong, but the national change, we're seeing like Applebee's, Chili's, Ruby Tuesday. Older chains are not doing well.
They're not growing, yeah.
Yeah, they're not doing, they're not seeing the growth that they did. So, they're finding themselves out of fashion, and people are looking for these smaller, more unique things. So you even get people like Lowe's doing these. We have a Orchard Supply, which is these sort of small individual hardware stores. It's actually owned by Lowe's, so they're trying to compete this way. And so what Dr. Khalil's trying to do with his plan is kind of respond to where the market's going. It's not likely, given Food Lion, that he's going to have some large tenant that's going to anchor some type of strip center. So he's developed a plan that's dividing this into smaller individual chunks that he hopes that he will be able to market. And
More so, it's just a series of out parcels, basically? Is that what we're talking about?
it's a series of separate parcels.
Potentially?
There's no
Well,
real out parcels.
Right, yeah.
But yes.
you got 7, right?
So we
Excuse
can
me?
put a
Right here
Marina
you got
Maze
7.
in there.
7.
So how many entrances do you have to this property?
There's the main entrance that'll be shared to the north side.
You have cross-access into the other parking lot.
Yeah.
See, this is,
Yeah, it's smaller than we
this is
got.
the main access. This is the access area of the access arena that I indicated. We're showing another entrance
Yep, I saw that there.
along Clyde Morris.
Yeah.
Got a side.
Sorry.
So you don't have parking out on Clyde Morris, you don't have parking visible from the road, you got the businesses out by the road.
So is that the dark green area, or is that brown? Is that
That's-
gonna be, that's your,
Conservation.
yeah, conservation?
Yeah, this area is where we're trying to preserve as much of the existing vegetation as possible. I mean, there's landscape areas all along
Across the front, perimeter, yeah.
front, and there's actually some area up front that vegetative preservation. We just don't know what's going to happen in terms of.
We turn that around to the public real quick.
Yeah, we don't get down, we
There's some
won't
existing
nail down what you're gonna put in
vegetation
front.
in this area as well. We haven't. So I'm not showing that as dark because one of the things that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to go to the county. We're going to have to ask them for an additional driveway permit. They very well may condition some increases to the right of way in Clyde Morris. So we don't know.
Probably continue the breakdown lane or the decel lane, okay, yeah.
On these buildings, are they gonna be facing inward or outward?
Kind of both.
Yeah.
These are just
I mean,
ideas.
you're
I mean,
parking on one side, but your frontage is gonna be on the roadside.
Right.
It could be anything.
Yeah, it
This
could
is just
be.
an idea.
Yeah, and again, this is
conceptual
just,
with that.
at this point.
let's just remember, we're here talking about a variance for some signage.
Yeah, I understand, but
A great
There's
storage
gonna be-
unit can go here.
Oh,
there's gonna be
boy.
signage on the back of these buildings.
No.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Do we have any more questions of Mark? John, I'll start with you.
No, it's pretty straightforward, and he's trying to prepare his property for the future.
For the boom.
Yeah, exactly, and I understand it, and it makes sense.
Maria?
I'm good.
Bo?
Mark,
Mike?
Mark, think LED. LED, LED.
LED.
Huh?
Yeah, so the Clyde Morris access is just, maybe, you're gonna go ask for that, right?
We're gonna go ask for it.
And could happen, may not happen, you don't know yet.
Right.
Okay, cross-access to the other property is in writing, that's there, it has to happen, or is there any question?
That is our
Ours rules.
legal access to the property.
Okay. And then, and maybe this isn't for you, but I'm just wondering about stormwater retention on this particular parcel, is there?
There's a master stormwater system that's been already created
Okay.
and permitted.
All right, that's all I needed, thanks.
Newton? Anything of Mark?
Nothing that's pertinent to the Phase 2. I'm more concerned about what happens with Phase 1, but that's not on the table to discuss
Right.
tonight.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Mark. We appreciate you coming up. And again, you know, as always, we're looking for you to raise the bar to make this project better than the last. So if we can come up with some unique ways for signage, I would be so open to that.
Okay, well.
LED.
In case you
I
didn't
don't believe
know,
in
sign
one-
is an issue with some of this
One
work.
size doesn't fit all. Thank you, Mark. Anybody else care to speak to this? Sarah?
Mhm.
Sarah Jones, 44 Woodfield Drive. First, just because I'm not as skilled as you guys are we talking only about signs?
Correct.
Okay. So, I mean, I cannot believe that we're talking about signs and something that hasn't even been developed anywhere at all, but I'll take it. I want to make some general comments about the whole idea of another development in that area. I live in Ravenwood, and I also speak for a friend who lives in South Wind. This, number one, any entrance onto Clyde Morris is a traffic problem. Number two, all along that stretch of Clyde Morris, starting with the Walmart conglomerate or whatever, and going north, and there are vacant buildings. Some of the vacant buildings are new and have never been used, like the ones next to Walmart. Some of them are older and are across the street, like the Food Lion. Every vacant building is a site for vagrants, and it is also deteriorating, and it is an eventual mess. So why, I don't know all your code things, but I know that you don't build more vacant buildings. And I finally figured out in the Walmart thing that the money was made by the guy who did the building, and then he can walk away, and he doesn't care if those buildings remain vacant. So I don't know what you can do in your zoning and in your various things, but to talk about putting up some more structures there, which when you have so many vacant structures that are unused, is just not good for the neighborhood. It's just making along that main corridor blight. And so I would ask you, besides considering signs, if you can somehow, in the language that's permitted to you, because in theory, that's what zoning's supposed to do, is to keep the quality of the neighborhood. And that whole stretch down Clyde Morris is just becoming a series of vacant storefronts. I thank you for listening to me, and I really don't care what to do with the signs. I care what to do with that property. Thank you.
Sarah,
Thank you, Sarah.
I don't think Dr. Khalil would actually invest in a, Dr. Khalil's not going to invest in a property where he's going to lose money. He's not going to do something. He's a local guy. He's been around for a long time. And you can't really tell somebody what they can do with a property when it's already zoned that way. But we can control, certain things.
I've heard that argument. I understand that it's a valid argument to a point. But I also know there's such a thing as pressure. And I look at that Walmart thing. I drive by it every day, and I look at those vacant things just sitting there. And we were told it was going to be such a great thing. People were going to and just come, and they're not coming. The other thing is you increase traffic in an area where on one side, on the east side, there's a lot of elderly people, and on the other side, there's a lot of children. It's more family housing. So no thought has been made about that. But I hear about all the things that people have a right to do what they want to with their property, but I scratch my head and I say, why would somebody want to build a vacant building on their property? So there's something in the equation that isn't upfront.
There's some things you have to understand too. Some buildings, like everybody on this board has a little something that pokes at them. Mine is that food line. I don't even
Oh.
live near it, but I can't stand it. But there's some buildings you just can't do anything with, because as long as Food Lion's paying the rent on that building and they don't put it up for sale, there is nothing we can do. So that's something you need to understand as well.
I understand that, and I understand the technicality, that there's nothing you can do. But I'm older, I have more years on this earth, and I can tell you that if you keep working backwards, there is something that somebody can do. There's a game being played maybe farther back, because somebody can move that Food Lion mess off of there. It's just a question of if somebody's willing to. Thank you.
Hold on, Sarah, because I'm not done with you. Okay. So I want to go over a couple of things with you while you're here. So to talk about the signage in this particular situation is you're laying the groundwork now for what can be done later. Okay, so if we can lay groundwork now as a whole, you know what I mean, it's going to help the overall finished project, okay, and may it be signs and how we allow the signage in the city. So laying that groundwork in this language here, I think is a plus, okay? So now your Food Lion thing, I absolutely agree with you. And I've heard it so many times from the people who live right there in that area. And unfortunately, we live in a world of free enterprise, you know, and I always say to it, what if it was your property and you wanted to finally develop your property? We can't tell you no. We can make you jump through the hoops, and we can make you put a widget in a square hole or whatever. And if you do it, then can you say no? So we can shape what the project's going to look like. We can shape as much as we can shape, but you can't limit free enterprise, you know what I'm saying? So I know that Food Lion is an eyesore, and it is to me, as is the church at the corner of Madeline and Williamson.
Oh.
You know what I mean? So we don't get started on it, and I understand that. And I really wish there was something as a city you can do, but you can't. And so what we can do here on this panel is we can shape what project comes next, okay? We can limit what it looks like, what it is, and what we need, and how much plants and parking. We can shape what comes, but it's hard to, you know, it's hard to go back, like you said, this 20 years on this Food Lion thing, so.
And it's not just the Food Line. You cross the street.
Yeah.
There's that Walmart thing with those vacant side buildings. They're vacant too.
Yeah.
We were told that they were going to be this great, busy thing. But I understand what you're saying, and I thank you for explaining that to me. And I understand that he wants to make money on his property, but
And that's not what we're here about.
Yeah,
No.
You know what I mean? We're here about what's best.
right. And
Okay.
what's best is to not have some more vacant buildings along Clyde Morris there.
I understand
And
your
also to
position.
think about the traffic.
But you also got to look in fact, Sarah, that there's a possibility that this will spur some action on the phase one. If this will make that phase one look like crap, the property owner might come in and say, you know what, we're going to come in and we're going to do some finishing touches on that and make that look better.
And that's what happened in Dunlawton
You have-
Square as an
that's-
example.
You got to do that.
When Paul Hollop went in there, that plaza was declining, and it's it's major thoroughfare, Dunlawton and Nova, and that thing started to decline, and so Paul Hollop came in and, you know, he did his thing, and then Publix said, now that plaza is back to, there's no vacancy in that
You got
plaza
out
anymore,
parcels
you
that
know?
had to be built to
So-
handle it. So this is one of those things that
So
can
if we
spur
can
growth.
shape what comes to the future, maybe again, it will help, it will
I'd
help
like to
that.
point out that in Hollop's portion of the Dunlawton Square Shopping Center, there's still, I think, 30,000 square foot of that renovation that's vacant and available. And they had a tenant in where Peach Valley Cafe is, and then they went out and it sat vacant for over a year before Peach Valley. And Peach Valley took probably about a year from the time I knew that they were going in there to the time that they actually had a sign up that said open on it. So things take a long time in commercial real estate and leasing, and it takes a long time. It can take a number of months sometimes just to get the lease signed. Then it takes time to get a build out and get it open. I know that in the plaza with the Walmart, I know that I tried to look for a location for a business to go in there, and they already have a signed contract with a like business, so I wasn't able to put them in there. There are things that are going to go in there. I don't know why they're not. I just know that it takes time.
So Sarah, I do believe that this board sits up here to shape our future the right way and listen and to be understanding of where we're going.
And I do understand the law and the limitations, but I also know, just like you did earlier today, a gentleman was willing to bend even though he didn't have to.
Mm-hmm.
And I ask you, as this piece of property moves forward, that that there be some listening to the people in the neighborhood, and that maybe Mr. Berman start to notify people in the neighborhood whenever there's going to be things about this property,
Mhm.
so that people can get here with their concerns.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
I thank you very much.
Anybody else? Any other discussion?
We need a motion and a vote.
Make a motion to approve case number 174000002 with the 2 variances.
Second. Gotcha.
Those aren't technically variances,
get
they're
Jip
just
being the girl
policy.
up here.
Policy. Just want to make that clear.
Did you get a second on that, a clear second? Did we have a winner?
We got a playback?
It's me, it's me.
You got a second, though, for sure. Yeah, I have a second. All right, good deal.
I have a motion and a second. Would you call the roll, please?
John Junko.
Yes.
Maria Middleton.
Yes.
Bo Bothamy.
Yes.
Mike Arminio.
Yes.
Thomas Jordan.
No.
Newton White.
Yes.
Lance Green.
Yes. All right. That's it? Commissioner comments.
Did you want to keep going? I mean,
You want to talk about signs for a while?
Coming up, Tim? Are you interim again?
where's Wayne today?
He's not gone yet, is he?
Not gone yet. Also want to speak on the public notification for the last item. We've had a yellow sign up there on Clyde Morris since the property came in there. It's got the city's contact
What
information.
size is that sign? Is it illuminated?
It's about 4 by 4.
Do we have a
so
permit?
that's our public notification system for those PCDs. So it's
We don't
been
want a
there.
billboard up there either, right?
Just wanted to put that, make sure that was indicated on for the record.
Okay. What were you saying, Sarah? I'm listening.
I saw the yellow sign.
Okay.
I took a picture of the yellow sign. I contacted the city. A young lady called me, and she said I would be kept up to date on this thing.
Okay.
Okay, we'll look into that then.
Thank you.
We'll look into that. They were supposed to update you. I
All right.
apologize.
Thank you, Sarah. All right. Anything for Tim? Let's
Yeah,
wrap it up. Let's wrap this baby up.
Well, is there a, you got to pull a permit to put a dock in, right? Because there's a dock going in down by where I live, off of Riverside.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know if they pulled a permit? They got cranes and they've got a big,
I would need to have the address to take a look to see.
5224, something like that. Well, he's the only one who's building a dock.
Look it up
I mean, I
right
drive
now.
by,
It's online.
I drive by.
I don't have that app on the phone
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah, you should be able to see it online, right?
He's got it for you.
I mean, he's got cranes and everything, got half the road blocked on one, and I'm wondering, because I didn't think they were supposed to dock boats out there, and he's got the thing, a boat called the Shore Bed. So he's got triple motors on it, it's probably a 30-foot boat, and he's got a dock next to this dock going in.
You could check online.
I know I could, but I thought I'd ask Tim first.
You have the water down
I'll look
there?
into it and
Public
get back with you
record.
tomorrow.
Tim would need to check online.
Yeah, because I mean, that's the only
Dredge it.
thing is that I know when Andy was putting in his dock
permit
for
for that, too.
the Clark Properties, that they had I don't know if it's something different, but I know they're not allowed to dock any boats there. There's no boats allowed to come up to that dock for weddings or anything like that. So I wasn't sure because that's shallow water
Yeah.
through that canal right there, and they're putting this a.
But he owns the riparian rights to.
He owns it, but he can't put boats. He's not allowed to dock a boat on there.
Seriously?
You know, when I was
But he
approved,
has a boat.
Well, I think that's Andy's for that gazebo.
because it's commercial.
It basically, that was part of a PCD.
Yeah.
He had put that restriction on there because there was concern about boats docking on that then.
Oh, yeah.
So the gazebo, which was gonna be used for the weddings,
Yeah.
it actually, as part of the amendment that went through that planning commission and city council ultimately approved, it placed that condition about the docking the boats in.
Yeah.
But I can check into the permit for you and
Well,
get back with you tomorrow.
Well, I mean, because they're starting, you stir up the water, and I mean, we've had guys down there building docks without a permit and have to tear them down, and they think they can do it. And this guy, like I said, he's putting a Mac Daddy dock there.
Oh, we've
And I
had
don't
one
think
come
he-
in
I
front
don't
of
think
this board asking for a variance after he
we had
built,
two of
remember?
them. We had two of them, and they had to tear them down. And so, I mean, this guy's, I mean, I wanna make sure that he's pulling a permit and not disturbing, cause that ecosystem down there is very, very particular. And so I don't want somebody tearing up the ecosystem down there in that river, you know, and, you know, if he's doing it with a permit, good. But I don't know.
Don't you have to go through the Army Corps and help?
You gotta go through St. John's, you
St.
gotta
John's
go through
Water
the city.
Management District?
Yeah, and even if you put it back in the same footprint, which I don't think he's doing, because it looked like he's going into the bulkhead of that stream there.
Oh, he's rebuilding?
He's rebuilding it, totally
Probably
rebuilding
gonna
it.
get it.
So anyway, Tim said he will check it out.
That's good. No, it's very important.
Anything for Tim Newton?
Signs.
Were you able to follow up on speaking of the church at Madeline and
Yeah,
Williams?
code enforcement basically went back out there earlier this week and are basically starting the process there for getting that area mowed in. And like we spoke to, we've been notifying the property owner that the clock is ticking in terms of doing something with that building that was based off that MDA that you guys approved about 2 years ago.
Aren't they about past the point of no return to get a permit?
They're like a few
They don't
months
have
out.
time to get a permit?
They
to-
probably, I can't say that, but basically it's getting close to, I believe, less than a year now, or to basically having to have permits in hand and be under construction or demolishing the building.
And who's gonna demolish the building?
The property owner is required by the MDA
Still
to
the
fully.
same owner that
Could the
built
city,
it?
could the city demolish it and put a lien on the property
I
and
think so.
do that, or no?
And charge them back.
Man, I'd love to see
You know,
that thing
the
flat.
Attorney's attorney on that one.
We're gonna have a
All right.
demolishing party when it
I'd
happens.
love to see that thing flattened.
We've
We
been.
blow it up or
the-
burn it.
Notified the property owner of that that restriction that he agreed to in that MDA.
Because the property is in disarray. I mean, the windows are broken, the
awful.
vegetation's growing on the building, and it is an eyesore to no end.
Like I said, you know, code enforcement's
Amazed.
going back out there and starting
Are-
that process up again with him. I mean, it's
Speaking of
ongoing.
speaking of code enforcement, has any movement has it ever moved forward to change the idea of a repetitive violation? Because I know under the current method, if they go out there today and they clean everything up, the case is settled, and then 2 months down the road, it's all back again. It's not a repetitive violation. It's a new violation, and people keep allowing their property to fall into disrepair, and they never get penalized for it because it's never a repetitive violation if they fix it, and they've got such a time frame to get it fixed before it actually goes to the magistrate and they get an official violation.
But I don't think you can't get a code violation and then have one within a certain amount of time, or if he clears that violation, then you start the clock over
I
again?
think there's basically repetitive when if you keep on doing
Yeah.
the same thing over again.
Yeah,
they
yeah.
are
If you,
speed it up
if you
then.
clear the violation,
Yeah, it's still strike two.
Yeah.
not what, the current code, that's not what's happening.
Well, he's going in front of a magistrate now instead of.
Go for the magistrate. I can do with
They'll
code
take you,
enforcement and get back with
take
you.
you
I
look at
mean,
your
it's
file, say
kind of-
you violated
you can do
here,
whatever
here,
you
here,
want.
here, and here.
Yeah, he can fine you.
Yeah.
Going back.
I remember when it was the junk recycling guy down in Harbor Oaks. He had always
Which
pile
one?
it.
Yeah.
He would always
Wasn't
pile
junk.
everything in, and he never actually got fined by the magistrate. So it was always a first-time offense. It was always a first-time offense because he'd never gone through the whole process.
Okay. Tom?
Told you guys not to give him 3 years.
Well,
That was the
6
minimum
months,
we
a
could
year,
get,
3
wasn't it?
years, it wasn't going to really make a difference.
I wasn't here then, don't blame me.
So since we're talking about it, what happens to the gas station out there
Yeah.
next to the Walgreens?
Should have told him a year.
The BP
Tear it
thing,
down in a year.
next to the Waffle
Or
House.
Taylor and
Oh, he's one
Williamson.
right by me.
We have not had any
I'm not.
development proposals come in for that then, and we don't have a MDA amendment on that one to get that demolished. So we're just waiting on that one to be.
The gas
gas
station.
station.
One
Next to
on
the Waffle
Taylor
House.
and Williamson.
But ultimately, if it came to be and it was gonna open back up for business, they would have to make that connectivity, correct?
Correct.
All right.
Yeah.
Mike? Sorry.
Yeah, Max Marine is one Ridgewood corridor, and I've complained about it before. Those guys, I mean, is there anything we can do, I mean, other than just taking the building away from them and just tearing the thing down, because it's just a big,
Making a
huge-
park out of it.
God, I mean, it's right behind my house, and it's just disgusting. I mean, they have rats and stuff back there. The grass behind there is, I mean, make them put a fence up there at least to hide all that crap. But it's just a mess. I mean, and you know, we're trying to redevelop that corridor. You know, the medians now are going in and getting cleaned up and fixed up and all that stuff, and we're trying to draw, you know, economic development down there. And we have places like that, you know, that could be, was a nice building back before Max took it over, and then it's just gone and just repaired. It's crap.
But that's a code enforcement thing, isn't it, to keep hammering on them?
And I know they're always doing it.
Hammering, they're keep on hammering on it then.
But evidently, we don't have any teeth in that law then, because it's not doing any good. I mean, I'll keep complaining. I've called Deb a couple of times on it, because, you know, Citizens Connection, you know, they just jack them up. But
I mean, again, all we can do is keep putting the hammer down, Tim, you know? Bo, anything for Tim?
Yeah, I just real quick here. I was looking at the building activity report for the month of July. I noticed, well, I didn't notice, it's, I was looking at the number of applications. We have a 66% year-to-date increase year over year. In applications submitted, permits, 70.6% year over year. And I'm looking at the number of inspections that we're doing a day. How many inspectors do we have?
We're short of them.
Yeah.
We're doing 26 a day
Per man.
per man.
Right.
Average inspections per inspector, 490. And the reason I bring this up is because I hear a lot of, you know, scuttlebutt about these permitting processes and the inspectors that we're using. Are we still using contracted
We're
inspectors?
still using contract inspectors that are due to the workload then.
How are we keeping up with this stuff?
That's how most cities do it.
Most cities do have.
I mean, 70% increase year over year.
Well, again, that's why they went to,
That's why we've gone to basically, I mean, we're looking to hire inspectors to fill the positions that have been vacated. While we can't hire that at the time, that's why we're going with the outside companies to fill that void then.
Universal does it.
Universal
That's what they
just
hire.
did one at my house, you know, did a re-roof, and Universal Engineering, they
Yep,
sub them out.
Universal does
The
a
county
lot.
does the same thing. If you schedule inspections and it's more than the load, it immediately overflows to the subcontractor that we use, and that's the same thing the city's doing. You're putting 25 inspections on a man per day.
Yeah.
And some of those, you're not gonna get to in a day. Some of them might be a building final, or may it be framing inspection, or whatever, that takes a couple hours on end.
Well, I think the issue is
Well,
here.
overloaded, don't get me wrong.
Well, it's an overload, but the issue is, the result is that the quality of the inspectors.
I'll be the first to tell you, because I build in Port Orange, and Johnny will tell you, our inspectors in Port Orange are some of the best.
Yeah, especially Al. I mean,
Absolutely.
they're knowledgeable, they help you, they're very
Yeah.
professional, but when they do have the overload, then they go to another, they go to Universal. And Universal
Quinton
takes over
Hampton
the
too,
slack,
right,
and
still?
It's just
they do
Universal
it
right
in
now.
Holly Hill, they do it in South Daytona, they do it in Ponds Inlet. Universal has
They're doing it in
got
the
their
county?
own branch of inspectors that are leased or, you know, I don't know how you guys hire other subcontractors to do it.
This is just with Universal now, and like you
Yeah.
said, basically we were staffed with our own inspectors. We had some, basically, those vacancies appeared. That's why we had Universal come in to pull that slack up. But like you said, our inspectors, I mean, they're they work extremely hard, and they do a lot of inspections.
Who's the building official?
Marvin Dreyer, he basically was recently hired.
Oh, really?
So, but that's, you know, that's what we're using outside agencies to keep up with those inspections that we have.
It's not slowing down either.
Yep,
Oh,
it's gonna continue to grow.
Oh, think about it, you got Woodhaven coming in, you could have an inspector do nothing but sit in Woodhaven on day. But I work in New Smyrna, and I have one inspector who literally stays in Venetian Bay, that's all he does, because he can't keep up with the amount of projects that are just in Venetian Bay, you know?
That's a problem.
You good?
They all overwork
Maria?
though.
Anything for
They
Tim?
work and they stress out.
Nope, I think I'm good.
Johnny, anything for Tim?
No.
I'd like to go through the manual. No. Thank you, Tim.
Sorry about that.
All right, any staff comments
Yes.
at all? Good? Motion to adjourn?
make a motion.
So moved, second.
So moved.